Using humor in cold calling. Does it really work? Humor on cold calls, a lever, not a personality test. Cold calling is hard enough without trying to be funny on demand. In 2025, many teams still convert only 2 to 3% of dials into meetings, while top performers reach 6 to 10%, which means small improvements in the first seconds of a call can create outsized pipeline impact. Humor can be one of those improvements, but only when it's intentional, respectful, and tightly connected to business value. Prospects have heard every robotic opener and "do you have 27 seconds" pitch imaginable, so your first job is earning the right to stay on the line. Once you actually connect, nearly 65.6% of conversations can be steered into a productive discussion. So the opener isn't about entertainment, it's about lowering defenses fast enough to get to a real question. The practical question isn't whether humor can work, it's whether your team can use it without losing credibility. We see this constantly in outbound programs. Buyers still take meetings from cold outreach, but they punish anything that sounds fake, pushy, or tone-deaf. In fact, 82% of buyers say they've accepted a meeting from cold outreach, and 78% report having purchased due to a cold call at some point. The opportunity is there. Humor simply helps you sound like a human long enough to prove relevance. Why humor works psychologically when it's appropriate. Humor is a credibility tool when it signals confidence, composure, and social intelligence, especially in a high-friction moment like a cold call. The goal is a light pattern interrupt that breaks the prospect's expectation of a scripted telemarketing pitch, then an immediate pivot into a clear reason for calling. If the prospect gives you even a small chuckle or a softened tone, you've bought attention you can spend on discovery. Humor also increases recall, which matters in B2B where you're competing with dozens of similar vendors. Studies cited in marketing research show 90% of consumers are more likely to remember funny messaging, and humorous ads have been found 47% more likely to be remembered than non-humorous ones. A cold call isn't an ad, but the cognitive job is similar. Create a distinctive moment that makes your name and problem statement stick. Preference matters too, because "I'll think about it" often means "I'll forget you." Research summaries report 91% of people globally prefer brands to be funny, and 72% would choose a humorous brand over a serious competitor, which hints at a real advantage for tasteful, low-risk warmth. The catch is that humor only helps if it's perceived as appropriate. Otherwise, it reads as unserious or, worse, disrespectful. The one-line framework. Humor as a bridge into discovery. The best cold call humor is short, self-aware, and immediately useful. We coach reps to use one light line at the top, often acknowledging the awkwardness of cold calls, then transition directly into a permission-based value statement and a pointed discovery question. Your reps are not stand-up comics, they're trusted advisors who happen to be good at earning attention. Where teams go wrong is treating humor like a separate act instead of a bridge into the business conversation. If your opener is about everyone drowning in emails, your next sentence should naturally ask how they're handling inbound volume or how they prioritize outbound today. When humor tees up the exact question you want to ask, it feels purposeful instead of random. Delivery matters more than the words, which is why scripting alone won't save you. Two cold callers can say the same line and get opposite results based on pacing, tone, and whether they leave space for the prospect to react. In our experience running cold calling services at scale, the best reps treat humor like seasoning. A quick touch early, then they get back to crisp discovery and clear next steps. Operationalizing humor, scripts, guardrails, and coaching. If you want humor to work consistently, you have to operationalize it like any other conversion lever. Start by auditing 20 to 30 recent calls and identifying moments where prospects audibly relaxed, laughed, or stayed engaged longer. Then document exactly what was said and how it was delivered. That gives you real, on-brand lines instead of clever ideas invented in a vacuum. Next, define your safe humor framework so reps aren't improvising under pressure. Self-deprecating humor, situational humor, and acknowledging the reality of a cold call are usually safe. Sarcasm, politics, stereotypes, and jokes at a prospect's expense are brand risks that can spread across a buying committee. This is especially important for a sales development agency or outsourced sales team representing your brand, because one bad recording can travel internally for the wrong reasons. Finally, coach timing and abort behavior, not just the line itself. Reps should know exactly what to do if the prospect stays flat. Don't force a laugh. Don't explain the joke. Pivot immediately to value and let professionalism recover the moment. The fastest way humor becomes harmful is when it overshadows discovery, so every funny opener must earn the next question, not replace it. Humor works when it earns attention and trust in the first seconds, then gets out of the way so value can do the selling. Where humor helps most, the first seconds and the tense moments. Humor is most effective at the exact moments prospects are most defensive, the beginning of the call and any point where tension spikes. Early on, a light, self-aware line can reduce the reflexive, not interested response and keep them engaged long enough to understand why you called. That matters because the early seconds decide whether you get a conversation at all. After that, your discovery skill becomes the differentiator. Later in the call, humor can also reset emotional tone when a topic feels heavy, like pricing, change management, or resource constraints. The key is to laugh with them about the awkwardness of the conversation, not about their situation, budget, or team. A small, respectful line can lower pressure and make it easier to return to facts, outcomes, and next steps. In both cases, you should treat humor as a quick pattern interrupt, then shift immediately into business. That's how top outbound sales agencies use it. One moment of warmth, then a tight, persona-specific talk track. If prospects remember you as the funny caller but can't recall what you do, you entertain them without advancing pipeline. When humor backfires, personas, industries, and the read the room rule. Humor is not equally safe across personas and industries. Finance, legal, healthcare, cybersecurity, and senior executives often expect a concise, buttoned-up approach. What lands with a mid-level marketing leader might feel flippant to a CFO or general counsel. If the prospect sounds rushed, clipped, or stressed, skip the joke and lead with respect for their time and a clear reason for calling. A common mistake is forcing the same signature line on every account because it worked once. That's how teams turn a useful tactic into an annoying gimmick. And it's especially damaging for cold calling companies doing high-volume outreach where repetition increases risk. The fix is persona-aware variance and a simple rule. Start conservative, then mirror the prospect's tone as they reveal it. Cross-cultural calling raises the bar even higher because wordplay, local references, and sarcasm don't translate cleanly. If you're calling globally or into multilingual teams, keep humor universal and situational, or rely on warmth in tone rather than explicit jokes. For regulated teams, put an approval step in place before any new line goes live, the same way you'd review compliance language in any B2B cold calling services playbook. Testing humor like a growth experiment, not a debate. The fastest way to stop guessing is to A/B test humorous openers against a neutral control for 30 days. Split your SDR agency team or call list so half use a standard permission-based opener and half use a single, approved humorous pattern interrupt. Then, compare conversation and meeting rates by persona and industry. Because baseline dial-to-meeting performance can be as low as 2 to 3%, even a small lift is meaningful when applied across volume. Track metrics that reflect what humor is supposed to improve. How often prospects stay engaged past the opener, how often you earn a real question, and how often calls convert into a calendar invite. Once you've proven lift, expand cautiously. Don't add 5 new jokes at once, or you won't know what caused the change. This is where sales outsourcing can help, because an outsourced sales team can run tightly instrumented experiments at higher volume without pulling your internal leaders into daily coaching. Use a simple scorecard to keep the experiment honest and ensure reps don't freestyle outside the test variance. Putting it all together, a practical next step plan. If you want humor to reliably improve meetings booked, treat it like a repeatable capability. Record, review, approve, train, and measure. Build a small library of 3 to 5 pre-approved lines per persona, and keep them simple enough that non-comedians can deliver them naturally. Then train for delivery, tone, pacing, and the pivot, because that's where most good lines die. At SalesHive, we've learned that humor scales best when it's tightly constrained and tied to discovery. As a cold calling agency and cold email agency, we focus on the human moment that gets the prospect to stay engaged. Then we transition fast into relevance, qualification, and a clear next step. That approach helps protect your brand while still creating the pattern interrupt that makes you memorable. Whether you build in-house or partner with a B2B sales agency, the standard should be the same: humor that's authentic, respectful, and measurable. Prospects still take meetings and buy from cold calls. 82% have accepted meetings from cold outreach, and 78% say they've purchased because of a cold call, so the upside is real if you execute well. Your goal isn't to be the funniest voice in their day, it's to be the most credible, human, and worth replying to.